In today's halacha, we're continuing with the segments of laws relating to Erev Shabbos. So last week we discussed the laws regarding baking challah in Erev Shabbos, how it's a mitzvah of Einik Shabbos, of Kavod Shabbos, it's metak in the chait of the Eitz Hadas, and it's in memory of the showbread, the lechem aponim, baked in the Mishkan, and therefore in the Mikdash, and therefore the minig Yisrael, the ein l'shanis, that one should not swear from it is to bake challah in Erev Shabbos. In today's segment, we're going to discuss a detailed halacha with regards to baking of challahs that I have been asked by many different women, and unfortunately it's not so well known. It's as follows. May one bake challahs in a fleishik or milchik oven? So this question really splits into two different parts, which is baking challahs at the same time that there is a fleishik or milchik product baking in the fleishik or milchik oven, and baking challahs when the oven is clean of any meat or milk. So at times, if a person is not careful, the challahs can actually become treif, become asur, become not kosher. This sounds a little wondrous, but the chachamim in the laws of Taruvus forbade to knead fleishik challah, to knead dough as meat or milk, meaning to place meat or milk into them and make them fleishik or milchik, due to fear that one may come to eat it together with the opposite food, as bread is the staple of the home, and one constantly eats it with many different foods. So they made a knas, a fine, that anyone who kneads dough with milchik or fleishik, the dough becomes treif, the challah becomes treif, unless certain exceptions apply, as we will explain. So at times, if you aren't careful, it's possible for the challahs to become treif. Another scenario, it's possible for the challahs to simply be fleishik, or simply be milchik and not be treif, but it will be forbidden to eat it with the opposite food. And at times, you're able to bake it in the fleishik and milchik oven, and the challahs will remain completely parv, and you can eat it with the opposite food. So now we're going to break it down. What is what? The mutter way. What is the mutter way, the way that's allowed to bake challahs for Shabbos and have the challahs remain completely parv with no halachic shayla whatsoever? So there's two methods. The one method is not really very practical from a baking perspective, which is to cover the challahs. The halacha is that whenever a food is fully covered, airtight, and it's being baked in even a treif oven, then no residue and no vapor of any treif food that is in this oven can enter and permeate through the covering, the airtight covering. So therefore, obviously, one method is to have the challahs completely wrapped, the dough completely wrapped in an airtight fashion, and in such a fashion it can be baked in any oven, and in fact it can be baked even at the same time that one is baking fleishiks, because there is no residue, there's nothing whatsoever that's going to permeate the challah. But this is impractical because people don't cover their challahs when they bake it. So the only way that it's allowed to bake revealed challahs, revealed dough in your fleishik or milchik oven and have it remain parv is through making sure that the oven is completely clean of any residue. That the oven is completely clean of any milchik or fleishik residue, and by doing so, you make sure that there will be no vapor coming from any residue entering into your challahs. In such a case that the oven is clean, and one of the ways to verify this is simply by turning a normal house oven on to the highest temperature for about 5-10 minutes, and as is vividly seen, it will burn any leftovers, any remnant that's in the oven. So in such a case, if there is no residue, one can enter the dough, the challahs into the oven, and bake them even if the oven is ben yomei, which means even if the oven was used for fleishiks within 24 hours, it is mutter. This is based on a tshuva of Moshe Feinstein that holds that doughy products such as challah do not release vapor, and therefore, since there's no vapor leaving the challahs, it is not able to remove any of the fleishik taste from the walls or ceiling of the oven. There are, however, rabbanim that are machmir if the oven is ben yomei, and if anyone is in doubt, they should contact their rab. According to all, there is no problem whatsoever to bake challahs in this fashion in a clean oven, in fleishik or milchik, if the oven is not ben yomei. When these directives are followed, the challahs remain completely parv and can be eaten with either fleishiks or milchiks. When these directives are followed, it is permitted to even bake the challahs at the same time that there is meat baking in a meat oven or milk baking in a milchik oven if the milchik or fleshik dish is airtight. So therefore there's no vapor escaping from them. So in a time of need where a person's in a big rush for baking time in the oven before Shabbos, if the chicken is airtight covered, then the challahs can be baked there so long as the oven is clean and the challahs will remain parrot. In the event that one baked challahs in the oven with fleshik or milchik residue that was there, or with fleshik or milchik actually baking there at the same time without being covered airtight, which is the same status, meaning if you're baking with residue, it's just as if you're baking with a chicken inside. There's no difference halachically. One who does so, it's possible that the challahs become treif as the challahs become fleshik or milchik. What happens is that vapor leaves the fleshik residue or leaves the fleshik dish, enters into the roofing, and then drops back down into the challah, making it fleshik or milchik. So, what will determine whether these challahs are treif or are permitted to be eaten with only fleshik or milchik? So, it's determined as follows. If one baked a small amount that would only last 1 day's worth of meals, such as there's just enough challahs for Shabbos, or the challahs are shaped in a way that the family knows that such challahs are fleshik or such challahs are milchik, then it would be permitted. If, however, the challahs are always a parv shape, they're never a shape that's defined as fleshik shape or milchik shape, and when baked more than a day's worth, such as she was baking for 2 weeks worth, then you must contact the Rav, as according to many poskim, as I said before, the challahs do become forbidden to be eaten if they were baked simultaneously with milchik or fleshik residue in the oven. There are poskim that are matir in a time of need, and therefore, in such a situation, one should contact the Rav what to do, but initially, don't enter yourself to the situation. Make sure the oven is clean of fleshik and milchik residue when baking challahs for Shabbos. In today's halacha, we're going to go through understanding the methods that the hashgacha companies use during the year of Shemitah to provide produce for the consumer, for the law-abiding public. So as we've discussed in previous shiurim, there is a prohibition to do business with Shemitah produce. So this obviously poses a huge difficulty upon hashgachas, as it is the job and the responsibility of hashgacha to provide halachically valid produce on the market. And if Shemitah produce may not be sold, so if you knocked off the market a very large percentage of your yearly fruit and vegetables